Hook up! Police!
A little farther, bro. A little more.
Okay, good, you're good! We're good! Step back forward. Didi, we're up!
Tommy Robinson March. Starmer's never surrender response. The battle for Britain's soul. Right. Before we dive into what might be the most consequential political moment of Starmer's premiership so far, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stay plugged into what's happening in British politics because things are moving fast, and UK Connors is your front row seat to the action that matters. London witnessed scenes this weekend that will reverberate through British politics for months to come. When Tommy Robinson called for his Unite the Kingdom demonstration, nobody quite predicted the scale of what would unfold. Between 110,000 and 150,000 people flooded the capital streets, smashing the organizers' own expectations and creating a political headache that's landed squarely on Keir Starmer's desk. But here's where it gets interesting. The Prime Minister's response wasn't the usual political platitudes we've come to expect. Instead, Starmer delivered what can only be described as a defiant, never-surrender message that reveals something crucial about how Labour intends to handle the growing tensions fracturing British society. 26 police officers were injured during the demonstration, with 4 in critical condition. Let that sink in for a moment. This wasn't just another weekend protest that came and went. This was civil unrest that left Britain's finest blooded and battered, while the nation watched on, divided between those who saw patriotic expression and those who witnessed something far more troubling. Starmer's response was swift and uncompromising. Writing on X, the Prime Minister declared, "We have a right to peaceful protest. It is fundamental to our nation's values. However, we will not tolerate attacks on police officers performing their job or for individuals who feel threatened on our streets due to their background or skin color." Now, this is where Starmer showed his political steel. Rather than simply condemning violence, he made a calculated move to reclaim the narrative around national identity itself. Britain is a nation that was proudly built about tolerance, diversity, and respect, he continued. Our flag is a representation of our varied nation, and we will never give it up to individuals who use it as a symbol. Think about that for a moment. The Prime Minister essentially declared war on the appropriation of British symbols by the far right. This isn't just political positioning. This is a battle for the very soul of what it means to be British in 2025. The demonstration itself tells a fascinating story about the state of modern Britain. While Robinson supporters filled the streets, 5,000 counter-protesters organized an anti-racism response. 2 visions of Britain, quite literally facing off in the capital, with police caught in the middle. 24 arrests followed, for offenses ranging from affray to violent disorder, assault, and criminal damage. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of this entire episode was the government's response beyond Starmer's initial statement. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood didn't mince words, promising that anyone taking part in criminal activity will face the full force of the law. Standard fare, you might think, but the real intrigue came from Business Secretary Peter Kyle's more nuanced analysis. Kyle described the demonstration as a klaxon call for lawmakers to tackle immigration and other issues of public concern. Here's a senior government minister essentially acknowledging that ignoring the underlying grievances that fuel these movements isn't a sustainable political strategy. It's a remarkably honest admission that goes to the heart of Labour's challenge. Speaking on BBC's Sunday Morning with Laura Kuensberg, Kyle offered perhaps the most insightful analysis of the day. There are individuals like Tommy Robinson who can tap into societies that are growing apart. A lot of it goes back to its roots in the financial crisis and the effect that had on communities throughout the nation, and we have been unable to reunite our communities since. This is political analysis at its most sophisticated. Kyle isn't just dismissing Robinson's supporters as extremists, he's identifying the systemic failures that create the conditions for such movements to flourish. The 2008 financial crisis, community breakdown, economic displacement, the failure of successive governments to address legitimate concerns about immigration and social change. If you're not already subscribed to UK Connors, now might be a good time to hit that button because we're going to be tracking exactly how Labour responds to these challenges over the coming months. But the story doesn't end with domestic politics. Enter Elon Musk, who uses Platform X to wade into British political discourse with all the subtlety of a Tesla Cybertruck crashing through Westminster. The tech billionaire called for immediate political reform in the UK and advised demonstrators to fight back or die. Kyle's response to Musk's intervention was deliciously British in its understated dismissal, slightly incomprehensible and totally inappropriate. Translation: would a colonial upstart kindly mind his own business? It's a kind of diplomatic put-down that would make Sir Humphrey Appleby proud. Yet Musk's intervention raises serious questions about foreign influence in British politics and the role of social media platforms in amplifying divisive messages. When the world's richest man, who owns one of the planet's most influential communication platforms, starts issuing battle cries to British protesters, we're in uncharted territory. The broader political implications here are staggering. Starmer finds himself caught between multiple pressures. On his left, there's pressure to take a harder line against far-right activism. On his right, there's a recognition that dismissing legitimate concerns about immigration and social change as mere racism isn't politically sustainable. And hovering over everything is the specter of social media manipulation by foreign billionaires with their own political agendas. Kyle's admission that the government hasn't yet addressed the fundamental issues driving social division is both refreshing and alarming. Refreshing because it suggests a government willing to confront uncomfortable truths. Alarming because it confirms what many suspected, that successive administrations have been kicking can down the road while communities fracture and extremist movements gain ground. The numbers alone tell a story. When a Tommy Robinson demonstration can attract up to 150,000 people, that's not fringe politics anymore. That's a significant political constituency that any government ignores at its peril. The question is whether Labour's response will address the underlying issues or simply try to contain the symptoms. Starmer's never surrender message suggests a government preparing for a prolonged battle over British identity and values. The Prime Minister isn't just promising to maintain order, he's promising to fight for a particular vision of Britain, one that embraces diversity while maintaining social cohesion. But here's the rub. Political rhetoric is one thing, effective governance is another. The test for this government won't be in the strength of their statements, but in their ability to address the economic and social conditions that create fertile ground for extremist movements. The financial crisis that Kyle referenced didn't just damage bank balance sheets. It shattered communities and created the conditions for the political upheaval we're witnessing today. Brexit was one manifestation of this discontent. The rise of Reform UK is another. Tommy Robinson's ability to mobilize massive crowds is yet another. Labour's challenge is to address these underlying issues while maintaining social cohesion and democratic norms. It's a task that would challenge any government, but it's particularly complex for a party that relies on both working-class communities concerned about immigration and urban progressives committed to multiculturalism. The counter-protest element of Saturday's event shouldn't be overlooked either. 5,000 anti-racism activists represents a significant mobilization in its own right. These are voters too, and they have their own expectations of how a Labour government should respond to far-right activism. Starmer's strategy appears to be threading the needle by reclaiming patriotic symbols and rhetoric while maintaining commitment to diversity and inclusion. It's a politically sophisticated approach, but one that will require consistent execution across multiple government departments and policy areas. The international dimension adds another layer of complexity. Musk's intervention won't be the last time foreign actors attempt to influence British political discourse through social media platforms. The government will need to develop more sophisticated responses to this challenge while preserving free speech principles. What's particularly striking about this episode is how it reveals the limitations of traditional political categories. This isn't simply left versus right, or establishment versus populist. It's a more complex realignment around questions of identity, community, and belonging that cut across traditional party lines. Kyle's acknowledgement that communities have been growing apart since the financial crisis is a crucial admission. It suggests that the political class is finally beginning to grapple with the deeper social changes that have been reshaping British society for over a decade. The question now is whether Starmer's government has the political will and policy imagination to address these challenges effectively. The never surrender rhetoric is stirring, but voters will ultimately judge this government on results, not statements. Make sure you're subscribed to UK Connors because this story is far from over. The battle lines are being drawn, the stakes have been established, and the political consequences will play out over months and years to come. Saturday's events in London weren't just another protest. They were a preview of the political battles that will define Starmer's premiership and shape the future of British democracy. The Prime Minister has chosen his ground and issued his challenge. Now we wait to see whether he has the political skill and governmental competence to deliver on his promises. The health of British democracy may well depend on getting this right. Stay tuned to UK Connors. Hit that subscribe button, and let's see how this unfolds together.